In this video, we will read together in Hebrew the opening verse of one of the most famous of all Psalms. And please fear not, this video is for non-speakers. You don't need any previous knowledge in Hebrew. My goal here is to allow you to appreciate the nuances and the flavors of the original language even without recognizing a single letter. So please join me in a unique quest to explore this very well-known verse. Psalms 137:1 is important spiritually to both Jews and Christians, but it is also part of the broader culture. For example, many know the songs by Don McLean and Bonnie M, both putting the verse to music. The premise here is this: more than 99% of humanity rely on translation to read the Tanakh or the Old Testament. The thing with translation is that they are inherently limited. And just to be clear, I'm not against them. I've been a translator for over 20 years, so I know what they can provide and what they can't. The thing this video attempts to give you, and the same goes for all my other uploads, is that they provide an opportunity for a deep dive. I'm proudly part of those who do speak Hebrew as their first language in day-to-day life here in Israel, so I think I can help. And I should point this out. My channel is not about religion, but purely linguistics. You're welcome to be with me regardless of your faith or even lack thereof. So first, let's read the verse in Hebrew so you'll hear what it sounds like. Note that Hebrew is written from right to left, similarly to Arabic, Persian, and Urdu. Al naharot Bavel, Sham yashavnu, Gam bachinu, Bezochrenu et Zion. First of all, you probably could hear that the text doesn't rhyme, despite this being a poem. There are other mechanisms at play. We'll talk about it later. Just like any poem out there, Psalms have shorter lines, with meaning condensed into fewer words. Basically, the first verse of Psalm 137 has 3 lines or units, each with only 3 to 4 words, or 10 in total. The English translations have a bit more, 14 to 15 words, which is not that dramatic, but still. What we're going to do now is to look at each individual word in the verse. While doing this, we will try to tie everything together. The first word is al. It normally means on, like in Isaiah 62:6, where the watchmen are standing on the walls of Jerusalem. This is just one of numerous examples. So literally, based on this basic meaning of al, Psalms 137 appears to suggest that the people were sitting down on the river. And in case you wondered, there is another related way in biblical Hebrew to say by the river, like in Exodus 2:5, where the maidens of Pharaoh's daughter were walking by or along the Nile as they spotted the ark carrying infant Moses. The word al, like in Psalms 137, is accompanied by yad or hand. So on hand in Hebrew means close to, next to, alongside, etc. And here is al again, also used in an irregular way. The Hebrew in the Bible is very flexible, as you can see, and there are many other examples like this. The default meaning of al is indeed on, but obviously the people exiled from Jerusalem were not sitting on the rivers, but close to them. And just one last thing about this. Al is a very basic word used every day by us Hebrew speakers in Israel. For example, hachatula al hatelevizia. The cat is on the TV set. Well, as you can see, that's an old photo. The next 2 words are naharot Bavel. Naharot is a slightly modified variant of neharot, meaning rivers in the plural. This minuscule change in pronunciation from neharot to naharot is all it takes grammatically to link the word for rivers to the next word, which is Bavel, or Babylon in English. Taken together, Naharot Bavel is a pair linked to each other by a specific grammar. A good analogy to be able to appreciate this concept would be the extensive use of nouns as adjectives in English, like in the United States Congress. United States is a proper noun, but it is used to describe the other noun, Congress. In other words, two nouns turn into an adjective and a noun. This is sort of similar in Hebrew. So the best way to translate Naharot Bavel is probably the Babylon rivers. Psalms refers here to the two rivers that flow close to each other in Mesopotamia, or modern-day Iraq, Prat, or Euphrates in English, and Hidekel, or Tigris. The land between those rivers was the heart of the earliest civilizations in West Asia. Those included the Babylonian Empire, which conquered Judea in 597 BCE, destroying Solomon's temple in Jerusalem and taking the local elite back to Babylonia, where the psalm was written. Okay, we've just ended the first unit within the verse. Its literal translation can be on Babylon rivers. The word at the beginning of the next unit is sham, or there. Like al, this is yet another basic word that is being used every day by Hebrew speakers, like ze sham, it's over there, to show you that this is not a word found only in the modern language. We have upward of 700 verses where it appears, like Genesis 26:25, discussing the actions of Isaac when in Beersheba. After that comes the word yashavnu. Here too we have a nuance that is lost in translation. The most common translation into English is we sat down, which is by all means correct, but not completely. Let me show you what I mean. This is the root of the word. It is used in Genesis 18:1 to say that Abraham sat at the opening of his tent. However, beyond the basic meaning, it also refers to living, dwelling, or settling. There are numerous examples. In fact, this root in the Bible is used a lot more to talk about living in a place and much less to talk about the action of sitting down. Here is an example with Abraham and Lot, and it is obvious that they were dwelling in the locations mentioned. Thus, the psalm may refer to the fact that the exiled people of Jerusalem said they dwelled in the vicinity of the two rivers, far from their homeland. Not necessarily that they were sitting on the ground or on chairs. Just that you know there is that option. The next word is gam. It means also, like in 1 Samuel 31:5. Sorry for the violent example. It's the clearest I could find. But when looking at the English translations of Psalm 137, only one uses also. All others are avoiding it one way or the other. Before trying to see why, let's just quickly go over the next word, bachinu, which translates as we wept. So the four last words together can literally translate as there we sat, also wept, or there we lived, also wept, or sham yashavnu gam bachinu in Hebrew. First of all, can you feel the cadence? It is created primarily by adding the redundant words sham, or there, and gam, or also. But using the word also in English may not sound too good. In all likelihood, this is the reason why virtually all English versions just omitted it or replaced it with ye. To be sure, this is not standard Hebrew either. In normal phrasing, we would neither use sham nor gam. Since this is a poem, the writer took his liberties with syntax to create that poetic rhythm. Before covering the third and last unit within this verse, if you like this content, I would ask you to write a comment below if you feel like doing it. And also please go to my channel page by clicking on the image of my face in the circle below. This will take you to more videos like this one. Thank you. Back to the verse. The first word in the third unit is bezochrenu. This is the verb, and in front of it we have the prefix bet, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet equivalent to B in English. This prefix is interesting even more than the verb itself. It literally takes the word when and compresses it into a single letter. And this is a feature of Biblical Hebrew. It is rarely used in the modern language. And another point is that this verb, zochrenu, is a more biblical conjugation of the Hebrew verb for remembering. And yes, we have special forms of verbs and other parts of speech that make them more elevated and biblical. Just slight changes in spelling and or pronunciation that make the difference. To recap, I guess that the best way to convey the Hebrew is to say, as we were remembering. But in my suggested translation presented at the end, I will use a different strategy to retain the cadence of the Hebrew as much as possible, of course. The next word is et. It is the most common word in the Hebrew Bible, but has no equivalent in English and virtually all other languages. This is why it is always omitted in the translation. I invite you to watch my video about Genesis 1:1, where I discuss this word, including its connection to David Ben Gurion. I've also made a video specifically dedicated to et. The last word is Zion, or Zion in English. Note the ts sound, which usually does not appear at the beginning of words in English and therefore was replaced by a z sound. Great, we have completed covering all words of the verse. Now, how can we translate this in a way that will somehow preserve the feel of the Hebrew? For example, in terms of cadence. Well, in a few seconds, you will see a translation I'm suggesting. It's far from being perfect, but it attempts to convey the feel of the Hebrew and its poetic qualities. Let's read the verse one more time. על נהרות בבל, שם ישבנו, גם בכינו, בזוכרנו את ציון. Thank you for watching and see you next time.